On April 9, 2025, the Trump administration announced a significant shift in its tariff policy. This unexpected move came after months of intense speculation and behind-the-scenes negotiations. The announcement sent shockwaves through global markets and left many wondering about the president's true intentions. Investors and analysts scrambled to understand the broader implications of this policy change. The new policy included a 90-day pause on increased tariffs for most countries. This temporary halt was seen as a potential olive branch to international trading partners. This brought relief to many who had feared an escalating trade war. Business owners and economists alike breathed a sigh of relief, hoping this would lead to more stable trade relations. However, this reprieve came with a major caveat: China. The administration's stance towards China remained notably aggressive. The tariff rate for most countries was lowered to a universal 10%. This uniform rate was intended to simplify the complex web of international tariffs. This seemed to signal a willingness from the White House to negotiate and ease trade tensions. Many saw it as a step towards more predictable and fair trade practices. However, China found itself facing a different reality. The administration's policy towards China was starkly different from its approach to other nations. Their tariff rate was not lowered, but instead raised to a staggering 125%. This punitive measure was aimed at pressuring China on various economic fronts. This aggressive move against China made it clear that the trade war was far from over. The heightened tariffs were a clear message of the administration's hardline stance. The administration's decision to exempt Canada and Mexico from the additional tariffs added another layer of complexity. These exemptions were seen as a strategic move to strengthen regional alliances. These key trading partners, bound to the U.S. by the USMCA agreement, were spared the brunt of the new policy. This decision underscored the importance of the North American trade bloc. This exemption highlighted the strategic importance of maintaining strong economic ties with neighboring countries. It was a clear indication of the administration's priorities in regional trade. And on the water clause provided a small window of relief for some businesses. This clause was crucial for companies with goods already en route. Goods already in transit before the announcement were exempt from the reciprocal tariffs. This measure was designed to prevent immediate financial losses for businesses. This clause prevented immediate disruptions to supply chains and provided a short grace period for businesses to adjust. Companies were given a brief respite to realign their strategies. However, the long-term implications of the revised tariff policy remained uncertain. The global economic landscape was left in a state of flux, with many questions still unanswered. The Trump administration's sudden reversal on tariff policy took many by surprise, left many analysts puzzled. Some saw it as a strategic maneuver to gain leverage in ongoing trade negotiations. They believed it was a calculated move to pressure other nations into more favorable terms for the United States. Others viewed it as a knee-jerk reaction to growing economic pressure and market volatility. The sudden change seemed to reflect a lack of long-term planning and a response driven by immediate market reactions. The president himself provided little clarity on his motivations. His brief and vague comments left more questions than answers. Trump's statement that the pause was implemented because people were getting a little bit yippee fueled speculation about his decision-making process. Was this a well-thought-out strategy, or a reaction to public and market pressures? The statement suggested that the president was responding to market anxieties rather than following a coherent economic strategy. This approach raised eyebrows among economic experts. This raised concerns about the administration's ability to navigate complex global trade issues. The international community watched closely, uncertain of the next move. Treasury Secretary Bessent offered a different interpretation of the president's actions. She suggested that there was a deeper strategy at play. She claimed that the tariff reversal was part of a calculated strategy to put China at a disadvantage. According to her, this was a tactical move in the broader trade war. According to her, the pause was designed to create uncertainty among U.S. trading partners while maintaining pressure on China to make concessions. This explanation aimed to reassure both domestic and international stakeholders. This explanation, however, failed to convince many critics. They remained skeptical of the administration's true intentions and the effectiveness of such tactics. They argued that the unpredictable nature of the administration's trade policy was creating more harm than good. The lack of consistency was seen as a major drawback. The lack of a clear and consistent strategy, they argued, was undermining business confidence and jeopardizing the stability of the global economy. The world watched with bated breath, hoping for a more stable and predictable approach in the future. The market reaction to Trump's tariff announcement was swift and dramatic. Wall Street, initially caught off guard, quickly shifted into rally mode. Investors who had been bracing for the worst suddenly found themselves in a buying frenzy. The Dow Jones Industrial Average surged over 1,000 points, marking one of its most significant single-day gains in recent history. Meanwhile, the tech-heavy Nasdaq Composite Index soared to record highs, driven by strong performances from major technology companies. Investors seemed to interpret the tariff pause as a sign that the trade war was winding down. This optimism was reflected in the broad-based rally across various sectors. Certain sectors of the economy experienced particularly strong gains, benefiting from the perceived easing of trade tensions. Retail stocks, especially those with manufacturing operations in Vietnam, skyrocketed. The anticipation of reduced tariffs on imported goods fueled this surge. Companies like Wayfair, Levi Strauss, and Nike saw their share prices jump by double-digit percentages. These companies, heavily reliant on international supply chains, stood to gain significantly. The oil market also reacted positively, with U.S. crude oil futures surging over 4%. This was seen as a sign of increased economic activity and demand. However, not all sectors shared in the market euphoria. The reaction was mixed across different industries. Pharmaceutical stocks tumbled on fears that the administration might impose tariffs on drug imports. This sector faced significant uncertainty and potential disruptions. This highlighted the vulnerability of certain industries to the unpredictable nature of trade policy. The market's reaction underscored the complexities and risks involved. While some businesses benefited from the tariff changes, others faced increased uncertainty and potential economic harm. Small businesses in particular were left grappling with the fallout. The stock market rally also masked deeper concerns about the impact of tariffs on the broader economy. Beneath the surface, there were significant challenges. Many economists warned that the trade war was already hurting American businesses and consumers through higher prices and supply chain disruptions. These issues were not easily resolved. They argued that the short-term market gains were unlikely to outweigh the long-term economic costs of protectionist trade policies. The true impact of these policies would be felt over time. The political response to Trump's tariff policy was predictably polarized. Republicans largely defended the president's actions, arguing that he was taking a tough stance against unfair trade practices by China. They pointed to the stock market rally as evidence that the president's policies were working. Democrats, on the other hand, were quick to criticize the administration's handling of the trade war. They argued that the tariffs were hurting American businesses and consumers, and that the president's erratic decision-making was creating chaos in the global economy. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer accused the president of vaporizing Americans' retirement accounts with his trade policies. The tariff issue also exposed divisions within the Republican Party. Some moderate Republicans expressed concerns about the impact of tariffs on businesses and consumers in their districts. They urged the president to pursue a more negotiated approach to trade with China. Despite the political fallout, the Trump administration showed no signs of backing down from its confrontational approach to trade. The president continued to use tariffs as a tool to extract concessions from trading partners, even as evidence mounted that these policies were causing economic harm both domestically and abroad. As nations grapple with the consequences of protectionist policies, the global community responds in kind. Trade wars escalate, tariffs are imposed, and alliances are tested. The ripple effects are felt far and wide, impacting economies on every continent. Amidst the turmoil, leaders face tough decisions, balancing national interests with the need for international cooperation. The stakes have never been higher, and the path forward remains uncertain. Businesses are often the first to feel the impact of economic policies. They must navigate the complexities of tariffs, regulations, and shifting market demands. The resilience and adaptability of these businesses are crucial in maintaining economic stability and growth. The looming threat of recession can send shockwaves through the economy. It affects consumer confidence, investment decisions, and overall economic health. policymakers must tread carefully to avoid triggering a downturn while maintaining sustainable growth. Tariff policies can be unpredictable, creating a roller coaster effect for international trade. Businesses must stay agile, adapting to sudden changes in import and export costs. These fluctuations can have far-reaching consequences on global supply chains and economic partnerships. When tariff policies lack clear direction, it can lead to uncertainty and instability. Businesses and consumers alike face challenges in planning and decision-making. A coherent and consistent tariff strategy is essential for fostering a stable economic. The relationship between the United States and Iran has long been fraught with tension and mistrust. At the heart of this complex dynamic lies Iran's nuclear program, a source of deep concern for the international community and a potential flashpoint for a wider conflict. Recent efforts to revive diplomatic engagement between the two nations therefore carry immense weight, offering a glimmer of hope for a more stable and secure future. The stakes of these negotiations cannot be overstated. Failure to reach a mutually acceptable agreement could have far-reaching consequences, potentially leading to a nuclear arms race in the Middle East, further destabilizing an already volatile region. Success, however, could pave the way for a thaw in relations, opening doors for cooperation on critical issues beyond the nuclear realm. The path to a diplomatic solution will undoubtedly be arduous, requiring both sides to navigate deeply entrenched suspicions and overcome the legacy of past failures. The international community watches with bated breath, recognizing the profound implications of these talks for global peace and security. After years of escalating tensions and stalled diplomatic efforts, the United States and Iran have taken a tentative step back towards dialogue. On April 12, 2025, high-level officials from both countries met in Muscat, Oman, for a round of indirect talks aimed at reviving the stalled nuclear deal. This marked the first face-to-face meeting between representatives of the two nations since the Trump administration withdrew from the agreement in 2018. While the talks were characterized as indirect, with Omani officials acting as intermediaries, they represented a significant development in the long-running diplomatic saga. The meeting, which lasted for over 2 hours, provided a platform for both sides to articulate their positions and explore potential avenues for compromise. The choice of Oman as a venue for the talks was no coincidence. Muscat has a long history of playing the role of mediator between Iran and the West, having facilitated secret talks between U.S. and Iranian officials during the Obama administration that ultimately led to the 2015 nuclear deal. The decision by both Washington and Tehran to return to the negotiating table, even indirectly, reflects a shared recognition of the high stakes involved and a willingness to explore diplomatic solutions to a challenge that has vexed policymakers for decades. The delicate task of navigating the complexities of the U.S.-Iran nuclear talks has fallen upon the shoulders of seasoned diplomats from both sides. Leading the American delegation is U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, a veteran negotiator known for his expertise in Middle Eastern affairs. Witkoff brings to the table a deep understanding of the intricacies of the Iranian nuclear program and a wealth of experience in dealing with Iranian counterparts. Representing Iran's interests is Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi, a seasoned diplomat with a reputation for his sharp intellect and firm negotiating style. Araghchi played a pivotal role in the negotiations that led to the 2015 nuclear deal and is well versed in the technical aspects of Iran's nuclear program. Facilitating the dialogue between the two sides is Oman's Foreign Minister, Badr bin Hamad al-Busaidi, a respected diplomat known for his ability to build trust and bridge divides. Oman's role as a neutral intermediary is crucial, providing a safe and conducive environment for both sides to engage in frank and open discussions. The U.S. ambassador to Oman, Ana Eskrojima, also played a crucial role in the talks, providing on-the-ground support and logistical assistance. Eskrojima's deep knowledge of the region and her strong relationships with key players in the Omani government proved invaluable in ensuring the smooth running of the negotiations. As the United States and Iran cautiously explore the possibility of reviving the nuclear deal, Oman has emerged as a critical player in this high-stakes diplomatic dance. Muscat's role as a mediator is not new. The Sultanate has long been recognized for its ability to bridge divides and facilitate dialogue between adversaries in the Middle East. Oman's unique position stems from its long-standing policy of neutrality, and its close ties to both Washington and Tehran. Unlike some of its Gulf neighbors, Oman maintains cordial relations with Iran, even during periods of heightened regional tensions. This has allowed Muscat to serve as a valuable backchannel for communication between the two countries. In the context of the nuclear talks, Oman's role is multifaceted. First, it provides a neutral venue for the indirect discussions, allowing both sides to engage without the pressure of direct confrontation. Second, Omani officials act as intermediaries, shuttling messages and proposals between the American and Iranian delegations. This role is particularly important given the deep mistrust that exists between the two sides. Oman's foreign minister, Badr bin Hamad al-Busaidi, is widely respected for his diplomatic skills and his ability to build trust among parties with divergent interests. His personal involvement in the talks is seen as a positive sign, signaling Oman's commitment to facilitating a successful outcome. Section 5. Constructive Dialogue. A positive start to a long road ahead. While expectations were cautiously optimistic going into the April 12 meeting in Muscat, the initial assessment of the talks from both sides has been surprisingly positive. Both American and Iranian officials described the discussions as constructive and positive, suggesting a willingness to engage in good faith and explore potential areas of compromise. This positive tone represents a marked departure from the acrimonious rhetoric that has characterized the relationship between the two countries in recent years. It reflects a shared recognition that dialogue, however difficult, is preferable to the alternatives, which could include a renewed nuclear arms race in the Middle East and the potential for military conflict. It is important to note that the positive initial assessment does not necessarily mean that a breakthrough is imminent. Significant obstacles remain, including deep mistrust, divergent interpretations of the 2015 nuclear deal, and domestic political constraints on both sides. Nonetheless, the constructive tone of the initial meeting provides a glimmer of hope that a negotiated solution to the Iranian nuclear issue remains within reach. It suggests that both Washington and Tehran are willing to invest diplomatic capital in finding a way out of the current impasse. Section 6. America's Objectives. Curbing nuclear ambitions and promoting stability. The U.S. enters renewed nuclear talks with Iran to address threats to its interests and allies. Preventing Iran from developing nuclear weapons is a top priority. The U.S. also aims to curb Iran's ballistic missile program and support for regional proxies. Securing the release of American detainees in Iran is another key objective. The broader goal is to prevent a nuclear arms race and promote regional stability. A nuclear-armed Iran could trigger a dangerous escalation in the region. The Biden administration is willing to return to the 2015 nuclear deal, the JCPOA. Washington seeks a longer and stronger agreement addressing Iran's missile program and regional activities. Section 7. Iran's Demands. Sanctions. Relief as a path to nuclear compromise. Iran enters the renewed nuclear talks with its own set of priorities, driven by a desire to escape the crippling economic sanctions that have strangled its economy and fueled domestic discontent. Tehran insists that any return to compliance with the 2015 nuclear deal hinges on the lifting of these sanctions, which it views as illegal and unjust. Beyond sanctions relief, Iran seeks recognition from the international community of its right to develop a peaceful nuclear program, including uranium enrichment for civilian purposes. Tehran maintains that its nuclear ambitions are entirely peaceful and that it has no intention of developing nuclear weapons. Iran also demands guarantees that the United States will not unilaterally withdraw from any future agreement, as the Trump administration did in 2018. This demand reflects the deep mistrust that exists between the two countries and Tehran's skepticism about Washington's willingness to honor its commitments. On the issue of its ballistic missile program and its regional activities, Iran remains defiant, insisting that these are non-negotiable matters of national security. Tehran views its missile program as a deterrent against external threats, particularly from Israel and the United States, while its support for regional allies is seen as a way of countering what it perceives as Western influence in the Middle East. Section 8. A Legacy of Mistrust, the Shadow of the JCPOA and its Collapse. The 2015 JCPOA offered Iran sanctions relief for limits on its nuclear program, verified by inspections. Hailed as a diplomatic achievement, it faced bipartisan opposition in the US. Critics argued it didn't curb Iran's ambitions enough. In 2018, the Trump administration withdrew, reimposing sanctions. This move was condemned internationally, deepening US-Iran mistrust. The JCPOA's collapse impacts current diplomatic efforts, making negotiations tougher. Section 9. The road ahead. Charting a course toward a more secure future. As the United States and Iran embark on nuclear talks, the path ahead is challenging. Deep mistrust and domestic pressures cast a shadow over negotiations. Yet, the positive assessment of the April 12 meeting in Muscat offers hope. Both sides recognize the high stakes and the need for dialogue. Success requires flexibility and compromise. The US must acknowledge Iran's security concerns, while Iran must address international concerns about its nuclear activities. The road to a solution will be long and arduous, but the potential rewards, a secure Middle East and reduced nuclear risk, make these talks worth pursuing. The world of fencing is not known for its drama. Sure, there are duels and sword fights in the movies, but in reality it's a pretty niche sport. That is, well, until recently. At the Cherry Blossom Open, a fencing tournament in Maryland, all hell broke loose. Fencer Stephanie Turner refused to compete against Redmond Sullivan, a transgender woman. Turner's reason? She believed it was unfair. Turner took a knee during the bout, a powerful image. She was disqualified and escorted out. The video went viral. People were outraged. Some supported Turner, others condemned her actions. The Cherry Blossom Open became a flashpoint. The debate over transgender athletes in sports was no longer theoretical. It was real, it was raw, and it was happening on a fencing strip near you. So what's the big deal? What are the rules? USA Fencing, like many sports organizations, is grappling with this question. In 2023, they adopted a new transgender inclusion policy. The policy aims to create a more welcoming environment for transgender athletes. It allows transgender women to compete in women's events after 1 year of testosterone suppression treatment. This policy, however, has been met with mixed reactions. Some argue it's a step in the right direction for LGBTQ+ inclusion. Others believe it creates an uneven playing field for cisgender women. The debate is complex. There's no easy answer, and the Cherry Blossom Open incident has only thrown fuel on the fire. Redmond Sullivan, the transgender woman at the center of the controversy, is a talented fencer. She competed in men's fencing for years. In 2023, she transitioned and began competing in women's events. Sullivan has faced her share of challenges. She has been open about her transition journey, and she has spoken out against the discrimination she has faced. Despite the controversy, Sullivan has continued to compete. She hasn't always won. In fact, she often places in the bottom half of tournaments. But she keeps showing up. She keeps fighting for her right to compete. The Cherry Blossom Open incident didn't go unnoticed. The federal government decided to get involved. Education Secretary Linda McMahon announced an investigation. They want to know if USA Fencing's policy violates Title IX, the law that prohibits sex-based discrimination in education programs. But it doesn't stop there. Senator Ted Cruz, never one to shy away from a fight, has also jumped into the fray. Cruz, a staunch conservative, fired off a letter to USA Fencing. He's demanding they retract their transgender inclusion policy. Cruz argues that the policy is unfair to cisgender women. He says it gives transgender women an unfair advantage. He even threatened to revoke USA Fencing's status as a national governing body. That's right, he's bringing out the big guns. Section 5. A nation divided by a strip of gold lame. The title might sound dramatic, but it perfectly encapsulates the tension that has gripped the nation. At the heart of this controversy lies a seemingly innocuous strip of gold lame, a material that has become a symbol of division, passion, and debate. The Cherry Blossom Open incident and the ensuing fallout have, well, divided the nation. What started as a sporting event has spiraled into a cultural flashpoint, with people from all walks of life taking sides. The once unifying sport of fencing now finds itself at the center of a heated national conversation. It's become something of a political football. Politicians, commentators, and even celebrities have weighed in, each adding their own spin to the narrative. The debate has transcended the sport itself, touching on broader issues of fairness, inclusion, and identity. And, like most political footballs, it's being kicked around without much regard for the people involved. The athletes, who should be at the center of this story, often find their voices drowned out by the noise of public opinion and media sensationalism. On one side, there are those who support Stephanie Turner. A decorated athlete and a vocal advocate for fairness in sports, Stephanie has become a lightning rod for those who feel that the integrity of women's sports is at stake. They firmly believe she was right to take a stand against what they view as an unfair policy. For them, this is not just about fencing, it's about preserving a level playing field for female athletes everywhere. They argue that transgender women have biological advantages that give them an edge in women's sports. This perspective, while controversial, is rooted in concerns about physicality and competition. On the other side, you've got those who support Redmond Sullivan. Redmond, a trailblazer in her own right, has become a symbol of inclusion and the fight for equal rights in sports. They argue that transgender women are women and therefore deserve to compete as such. For them, this is about more than sports. It's about recognizing and respecting the identities of all athletes. They say that excluding transgender athletes is both discriminatory and harmful. To them, the debate is a matter of human rights and the broader fight for equality. It's a complex issue with no easy answers. Both sides present compelling arguments and the stakes feel incredibly high for everyone involved. And honestly, it's one that's likely to be debated for many, many years to come. As the dust settles, one thing is clear. This is about more than just a strip of gold lame. It's about the values we hold as a society and the future of sports as a platform for unity or division. Section 6. Fairness versus Inclusion, a tale as old as time. The debate over transgender athletes in sports often boils down to two competing values: fairness and inclusion. These two principles, while both essential, often find themselves at odds in the world of competitive sports. Both are important, no doubt about that. Fairness ensures that competition is equitable, while inclusion ensures that everyone has a chance to participate and feel valued. But finding a balance between them can be tricky. The challenge lies in creating a framework that respects the integrity of competition while embracing diversity and individuality. Those who prioritize fairness argue that sports should be divided based on biological sex. They believe this is the most objective way to ensure a level playing field. They say that transgender women, even after hormone therapy, may retain physical advantages from being assigned male at birth. This perspective is rooted in concerns about physiological differences that could impact performance. This, they argue, creates an uneven playing field. For them, fairness is about ensuring that no athlete has an inherent advantage over another. On the other hand, those who prioritize inclusion argue that transgender women are women and should be treated as such. They emphasize the importance of recognizing gender identity and respecting individual experiences. They say that excluding transgender athletes from women's sports is discriminatory and harmful. It sends a message that some individuals are less deserving of opportunities simply because of who they are. They also point out that transgender women are often at a disadvantage in sports as they may face discrimination and lack access to training and resources. It's a classic dilemma. How do you weigh the value of inclusion against the principles of fairness? How do you create a system that is both fair and inclusive? Is it even possible to achieve a perfect balance, or is compromise inevitable? There's no magic solution here. The answers are as complex as the individuals involved, and the debate continues to evolve with time. But it's a conversation we need to keep having. Only through dialogue, understanding, and empathy can we hope to navigate this intricate and deeply human issue. Section 7. The biology of it all. Does size really matter? It's a question that has sparked countless debates, not just in sports but in many areas of life. When it comes to fencing, a sport that combines strategy, agility, and precision, the question becomes even more intriguing. A lot of the debate centers around biology, specifically the physical differences between men and women. These differences are often highlighted in sports, where physicality plays a significant role. But is it the whole story? It's true that men on average are taller, stronger, and have more muscle mass than women. These traits are often seen as advantages in physical competition. However, does this mean men are inherently better athletes? This is largely due to testosterone, a hormone that men produce in much higher quantities. Testosterone contributes to muscle growth, bone density, and overall physical strength. But is testosterone the ultimate determinant of athletic ability? But here's the thing, biology is complex. Athletic performance isn't just about hormones or muscle mass, it's also about skill, strategy, and mental toughness. These factors can often level the playing field in unexpected ways. It's not as simple as saying all men are stronger than all women. In fact, there are countless examples of women outperforming men in specific areas, such as endurance or flexibility. The narrative isn't as black and white as it seems. There's actually a lot of overlap between the sexes. While averages may differ, individual capabilities can vary widely. This overlap challenges the notion that one gender is universally superior in physical performance. And, well, there are many other factors that contribute to athletic performance, such as training, skill, and genetics. A well-trained athlete with years of experience can often outperform someone who relies solely on physical attributes. Furthermore, testosterone suppression treatment, which USA Fencing requires for transgender women athletes, can significantly reduce any potential biological advantages. This process is carefully monitored to ensure fairness in competition. Studies on the impact of hormone therapy on athletic performance are ongoing and honestly, pretty inconclusive. Scientists are still trying to understand the long-term effects and how they interact with other factors like training and skill, but the evidence so far suggests that transgender women athletes do not have an unfair advantage over cisgender women athletes. In the end, sports are about more than just biology. They're about determination, teamwork, and the love of the game. Section 8, USA Fencing, between a rock and a hard place. So, where does this leave USA Fencing? They're caught in the middle of a heated debate. They're trying to navigate a complex issue with no easy answers, and they're facing pressure from all sides. On one hand, they have Senator Cruz and others threatening to take away their funding and recognition if they don't change their policy. On the other hand, they have transgender athletes and their allies arguing that inclusion is non-negotiable. It's a tough spot to be in, but it's important to remember that USA Fencing is not alone. Many other sports organizations are grappling with the same issues, and honestly, the outcome of this debate will have far-reaching consequences for the future of sports. Section 9. The future of sport, more inclusive or more exclusive? The debate over transgender athletes in sports is really a microcosm of a larger societal debate about gender identity and inclusion. It's a debate that's playing out in courtrooms, legislatures, and communities across the country. The outcome of this debate will have profound implications for the future of sports. Will sports become more inclusive, welcoming athletes of all gender identities? Or will they become more exclusive, clinging to traditional notions of gender and biology? Only time will tell. But one thing is for sure, the conversation is far from over. And it's a conversation we need to keep having with empathy, respect, and a willingness to listen to all sides. Barack Obama, the 44th President of the United States, stepped onto the stage at Hamilton College, his presence electrifying the room. It was April 3, 2025, and the former president had a message for the nation: defend democracy. His words were a stark warning against the policies of the Trump administration, policies he believed threatened the very fabric of American society. Obama's speech was a rallying cry, a call to action for all Americans who valued the principles of freedom and justice. His voice, familiar yet filled with a new sense of urgency, resonated through the hall. He spoke of the challenges facing the nation, challenges that he believed struck at the heart of American democracy. He warned against the dangers of complacency, reminding his audience that the freedoms they often took for granted were hard-won and constantly under threat. He called on them to remember the sacrifices of those who came before, those who fought and died to build a more just and equitable society. As he concluded his speech, a hush fell over the crowd. It was a call to action, a plea for unity, and a reminder that the future of American democracy rested not in the hands of politicians, but in the hearts and minds of its citizens. Obama's speech zeroed in on a critical issue: the need to resist the erosion of democratic values. He called out the Trump administration's policies, arguing they undermined the very foundations of American governance. Obama stressed the importance of institutions like universities and law firms in pushing back against these policies. He acknowledged that this resistance might come at a cost, potentially jeopardizing federal funding. However, he argued that some principles were worth fighting for, even in the face of adversity. Obama challenged the notion that institutions should remain silent in the face of injustice, arguing that their very legitimacy was tied to their willingness to defend the values they claimed to uphold. He stressed the importance of civic engagement, encouraging citizens to hold their elected officials accountable and to participate in the democratic process at all levels. He reminded his audience that democracy is not a spectator sport, it requires active participation and a commitment to the common good. He urged his listeners to pick up the baton, to carry the torch of freedom forward, and to ensure that the light of democracy continues to shine brightly for generations to come. A key theme of Obama's address was the Trump administration's disregard for democratic norms. He criticized the administration's attempts to silence dissent and undermine the free press. Obama specifically called out the administration's attacks on the media, labeling them a direct assault on the First Amendment. He reminded his audience of the vital role a free and independent press plays in a democracy, acting as a watchdog against corruption and holding those in power accountable. The former president also expressed deep concern over the rise of disinformation and its impact on public discourse. He argued that the proliferation of fake news, fueled by social media algorithms and a lack of media literacy, was poisoning the well of public debate. Obama implored his audience to be critical consumers of information, urging them to seek out diverse perspectives and to be wary of information that confirmed their existing biases. He stressed the importance of media literacy, encouraging people to understand how algorithms worked, how to identify credible sources, and how to engage in respectful dialogue with those who held different views. Obama passionately defended the importance of diversity and inclusion. He criticized attempts to stifle these values, particularly within academic institutions. He argued that a diverse and inclusive society is a stronger one, enriched by the contributions of all its citizens, regardless of their background. Obama warned that attempts to silence certain voices or limit opportunities based on race, religion, or sexual orientation were not only unjust, but also weakened the fabric of American society. He spoke eloquently about the importance of creating a society where everyone feels seen, heard, and valued. He argued that diversity is not just a box to be checked, but a fundamental strength, allowing for a greater range of perspectives, ideas, and solutions to complex problems. Obama condemned the rise of hate speech and discrimination, arguing that they had no place in a just and equitable society. He called on individuals to challenge prejudice and intolerance wherever they saw it, emphasizing the importance of speaking out against injustice and standing up for those who are marginalized. The former president ended this portion of his speech with a message of hope, reminding the audience that despite the challenges, progress is possible. Section 5. Economic Policies and Media Freedoms Under Attack. Obama didn't shy away from criticizing Trump's economic policies. He specifically targeted new tariffs, arguing that they hurt American businesses and consumers. He also condemned attempts to restrict media access, citing the White House's barring of the Associated Press as a blatant attack on freedom of the press. Obama drew a clear contrast between these actions and his own administration's approach, emphasizing the importance of transparency and accountability in a democracy. He reminded the audience that a free press is essential for a functioning democracy, acting as the eyes and ears of the people. He argued that attempts to control the narrative, to silence critical voices, and to manipulate information were hallmarks of authoritarian regimes, not democracies. Obama also criticized the Trump administration's cozy relationship with certain corporate entities, particularly those with a history of legal entanglements. He questioned the ethics of these relationships, suggesting they undermined public trust in government and raised concerns about conflicts of interest. The former president's message was clear: the erosion of democratic norms and institutions is a slippery slope. Section 6. Real-world consequences institutions under fire. Obama's speech wasn't just theoretical. He cited concrete examples of institutions facing pressure for their stances. He brought up Columbia University, which faced funding cuts after protests. He mentioned Harvard and Princeton, also under scrutiny. Obama painted a stark picture of the challenges facing academic freedom and the very real consequences of resisting the administration's agenda. He argued that these actions sent a chilling message to other institutions, discouraging dissent and critical thinking. Obama pointed out that these investigations were often based on flimsy evidence and politically motivated accusations. He argued that they were part of a broader pattern of attempting to silence criticism of Israel and stifle debate on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Obama's message was clear: these attacks on academic freedom were not isolated incidents but part of a broader assault on democratic norms. Section 7. Answering the call: active participation in democracy. Obama didn't just highlight problems, he offered solutions. He urged active participation in elections, stressing their importance in safeguarding democratic values. He reminded the audience that voting is not just a right but a responsibility, a powerful tool for change, and the foundation of a healthy democracy. He urged them to engage in thoughtful dialogue, to listen to opposing viewpoints, and to work together to find common ground. The former president emphasized the importance of civic engagement beyond voting. He encouraged the audience to get involved in their communities, to volunteer their time and talents to causes they believed in, and to hold their elected officials accountable. He reminded them that democracy is not a spectator sport, it requires active participation from all citizens. Obama also stressed the importance of supporting a free and independent press. Section 8. Echoes of History: The Ongoing Fight for Freedom. Obama placed the current situation in a historical context. He drew parallels to past struggles for democracy, reminding the audience that the fight for freedom is ongoing. He used examples like the civil rights movement to illustrate this point, emphasizing that each generation faces its own challenges in upholding democratic ideals. He urged his listeners to learn from the past, to draw inspiration from those who came before, and to continue the fight for a more just and equitable society. He reminded the audience that the freedoms they enjoy today were not handed down freely, but were hard-won through the sacrifices of countless individuals who fought tirelessly for justice and equality. Obama also drew parallels to the struggles for democracy happening around the world. He urged the audience to stand in solidarity with those fighting for freedom and democracy around the world. Section 9. A Message for the Future: Hope and Engagement. Obama's speech wasn't all doom and gloom. He ended on a note of hope, particularly emphasizing the role of young people in shaping a better future. He called on them to stay engaged, to fight for the values they believed in, and to never give up on the promise of America. His words were a powerful reminder that even in challenging times, hope, coupled with action, can create positive change. He reminded the young people in the audience that they are the future leaders, innovators, and changemakers who will shape the world for generations to come. He urged them to embrace their power, to use their voices to advocate for change, and to never underestimate their ability to make a difference. Obama ended his speech with a call to action, urging the audience to choose hope over fear, to choose unity over division, and to choose love over hate. The House of Representatives narrowly passed a Republican-led budget framework on April 8, 2025. This vote was a significant moment in the ongoing political battle over federal spending and taxation, reflecting the deep ideological divides that characterize the current political landscape. The vote was 216 to 214, exposing deep divisions within the GOP. The slim margin of victory highlights the challenges that Republican leaders face in maintaining party unity, especially on contentious issues like budget cuts and tax reforms. This budget blueprint paves the way for significant spending cuts and tax cuts. These proposed changes are central to the GOP's economic agenda, which aims to reduce the size of the federal government and stimulate economic growth through lower taxes and reduced regulation. It marks a crucial step in the GOP's efforts to reshape federal spending. Republican leaders argue that these changes are necessary to address the nation's growing debt and to create a more efficient and effective government. The narrow margin underscores the challenges Speaker Mike Johnson faced in uniting his party. Johnson, who has been a vocal advocate for fiscal conservatism, had to navigate a complex landscape of competing interests and priorities within his caucus. The passage of the budget framework sets the stage for a protracted legislative battle. As the framework moves to the Senate, it is expected to face fierce opposition from Democrats, who argue that the proposed cuts will harm essential services and disproportionately affect vulnerable populations. It also highlights the fragility of the Republican majority in the House. With such a narrow margin, any defections within the party could derail the budget process and undermine the GOP's legislative agenda. With only a 4-seat advantage, Speaker Johnson had little room for error. This precarious position means that every vote counts, and Johnson will need to continue to work diligently to keep his caucus united. The narrow victory underscores the difficulties in enacting significant legislative changes in a closely divided Congress. The intense debates and close votes are likely to continue as the budget process unfolds, reflecting the broader partisan divide in Washington. The budget resolution serves as a non-binding blueprint for future spending bills. While it does not have the force of law, it sets the stage for subsequent legislation that will determine the actual allocation of federal funds. It sets overall spending levels and outlines priorities for various government programs. These priorities reflect the GOP's commitment to reducing the federal deficit and promoting economic growth through targeted investments and spending cuts. The passage of the budget framework allows Republicans to initiate a process known as reconciliation. This legislative tool is crucial for passing budget-related measures with a simple majority in the Senate, bypassing the usual 60-vote threshold required to overcome a filibuster. This process enables them to bypass the Senate filibuster and pass certain budgetary measures with a simple majority. Reconciliation is a powerful tool that has been used by both parties to advance their fiscal agendas when they control both houses of Congress. This narrow victory for House Republicans marks the beginning of a long and contentious budget process. The coming months will see intense negotiations and political maneuvering as both parties seek to advance their priorities and protect their interests. It remains to be seen whether they can maintain party unity and overcome Democratic opposition in the Senate. The outcome of this process will have far-reaching implications for the nation's fiscal policy and political landscape. The outcome will have significant implications for the nation's fiscal future. The decisions made in the coming months will shape the direction of federal spending and taxation for years to come, impacting everything from social services to national defense. Section 2. The price of fiscal conservatism, deep spending cuts and tax cuts. The House GOP budget framework outlines a path for at least $1.5 trillion in cuts to federal programs over the next decade. This plan is part of a broader strategy to address the growing national debt and to ensure long-term fiscal sustainability. The proposed cuts are seen as a necessary step to curb government spending and to promote a more efficient allocation of resources. This ambitious goal reflects the party's commitment to fiscal conservatism and reducing the federal deficit. By implementing these cuts, the GOP aims to create a leaner government that operates within its means. The focus is on reducing wasteful spending and prioritizing essential services that provide the most value to taxpayers. The proposed cuts target a wide range of discretionary spending programs. These programs, which are not mandated by law, include various government initiatives that receive annual funding through the appropriations process. The goal is to streamline these programs and eliminate those that are deemed inefficient or unnecessary. These include education, healthcare, and environmental protection. The cuts in these areas are particularly controversial, as they affect services that many Americans rely on daily. Education cuts could lead to larger class sizes and reduced resources for students. Healthcare cuts might result in fewer services for patients, and environmental protection cuts could undermine efforts to combat climate change and preserve natural resources. The budget framework also prioritizes preserving the 2017 tax cuts and potentially adding new ones. These tax cuts are seen as a way to stimulate economic growth by putting more money back into the pockets of individuals and businesses. The GOP believes that lower taxes will encourage investment, create jobs, and boost consumer spending. This dual approach of spending cuts and tax cuts forms the cornerstone of the GOP's economic agenda. By reducing the size of government and lowering taxes, the party aims to create a more dynamic and competitive economy. The belief is that a smaller government will be more efficient and that lower taxes will drive economic growth. Republicans argue that these measures will stimulate economic growth and reduce the size of government. They contend that a leaner government will be better positioned to respond to the needs of the economy and that lower taxes will provide the necessary incentives for businesses to expand and for individuals to spend more. However, the proposed spending cuts have drawn criticism from Democrats and some moderate Republicans. Opponents argue that the cuts are too deep and that they will harm vulnerable populations. They believe that the focus should be on finding a balanced approach that addresses the deficit without sacrificing essential services. Critics argue that the cuts will disproportionately impact vulnerable populations and undermine essential services. They point out that programs like education, healthcare, and environmental protection are vital for the well-being of society, and that cutting funding in these areas could have long-term negative consequences. The debate over the depth and scope of the spending cuts is expected to intensify as the budget process moves forward. Lawmakers will need to navigate a complex landscape of competing interests and priorities. The outcome of this debate will have significant implications for the future of federal spending and the overall direction of fiscal policy. The House GOP budget framework represents a significant step towards enacting the party's fiscal priorities. It reflects a broader vision of a smaller, more efficient government that operates within its means. The success of this framework will depend on the ability of lawmakers to build consensus and to implement the proposed cuts in a way that minimizes negative impacts. The proposed spending cuts and tax cuts are likely to have far-reaching consequences for the economy and the lives of ordinary Americans. As the budget process unfolds, it will be crucial to monitor the impacts of these changes and to ensure that the goals of fiscal responsibility and economic growth are achieved in a balanced and equitable manner. Section 3. Navigating the Labyrinth. Speaker Johnson's high-stakes negotiations. Speaker Mike Johnson faced a daunting task in uniting his caucus behind the budget framework. The stakes were high and the pressure was immense. Johnson knew that failure was not an option, as it would not only jeopardize the budget but also his leadership position. The budget framework was a complex and contentious issue, with various factions within the GOP holding strong and often conflicting views. The narrow margin of victory underscores the delicate negotiations and compromises required to secure its passage. Each vote was hard-won, and the process was fraught with tension. Johnson had to balance the demands of conservative hardliners with the concerns of moderates, all while keeping an eye on the overall goal of passing the budget. Johnson spent weeks engaging in shuttle diplomacy, meeting with various factions within the GOP to address their concerns. He held countless meetings, both formal and informal, to listen to the grievances and suggestions of his colleagues. His ability to empathize and understand the diverse perspectives within his party was crucial in building trust and finding common ground. Conservative hardliners demanded deeper spending cuts, arguing that fiscal responsibility was paramount. They were adamant that the budget should reflect their commitment to reducing the national debt and curbing government spending. These lawmakers were vocal and unyielding, making it clear that they would not support any budget that did not include significant cuts. Meanwhile, moderates expressed reservations about the impact on social programs. They were concerned that drastic cuts could harm vulnerable populations and undermine essential services. These lawmakers sought a more balanced approach, one that would address fiscal concerns without sacrificing the social safety net. Johnson had to navigate these competing demands with finesse. Johnson skillfully navigated these competing demands, seeking common ground and emphasizing the need for party unity. He reminded his colleagues that their shared goals were more important than their differences. Through patient negotiation and strategic concessions, he managed to bring the various factions together, forging a fragile but functional consensus. He employed a combination of persuasion, arm-twisting, and strategic concessions to bring reluctant members on board. Johnson's approach was multifaceted. He used his oratory skills to inspire and his political acumen to negotiate. He also made calculated concessions, offering compromises that would satisfy enough members to secure their support. The Speaker's success in securing the budget framework's passage is a testament to his political acumen and leadership skills. It demonstrated his ability to lead under pressure and to unite a divided caucus. His colleagues' applause was not just for the budget's passage, but also for Johnson's adept handling of a challenging situation. However, the narrow margin of victory suggests that maintaining party discipline will remain a constant challenge throughout the budget process. The close vote highlighted the fragility of the consensus and the ongoing need for careful management. Johnson will need to continue his efforts to keep his caucus united as they move forward with the budget implementation. The negotiations highlighted the deep divisions within the Republican Party and the challenges of governing with a slim majority. The intense debates and close votes underscored the ideological rifts within the party. Johnson's ability to manage these divisions will be crucial in determining the success of his leadership and the party's legislative agenda. Johnson's ability to bridge these divides will be crucial in advancing the GOP's legislative agenda. His leadership will be tested repeatedly as he works to maintain unity and push forward with the party's priorities. The budget battle was just the beginning, and Johnson's skills as a negotiator and leader will be essential in the months ahead. The budget battle serves as an early test of his leadership and his capacity to unite a fractured caucus. It set the stage for future legislative battles and provided a glimpse into Johnson's approach to governance. His success or failure in these efforts will have significant implications for his political future and the direction of the Republican Party. Section 4. A precarious backdrop. Economic uncertainty looms over budget battle. The House GOP's budget battle unfolded against a backdrop of economic uncertainty and financial market turmoil. Global economic headwinds, rising inflation, and geopolitical tensions have created a volatile economic environment. These factors complicate the budget debate and raise the stakes for policymakers. The Federal Reserve's efforts to combat inflation through interest rate hikes have slowed economic growth. The ongoing war in Ukraine and its impact on energy prices have further fueled inflationary pressures. These challenges underscore the need for fiscal responsibility and careful stewardship of the nation's finances. The economic uncertainty adds another layer of complexity to the budget debate. Republicans argue that their proposed spending cuts are necessary to curb inflation and reduce the deficit. Democrats counter that the cuts will harm the economy by weakening the social safety net and reducing investments in key areas. The budget battle is not merely a fiscal debate, but also a reflection of competing economic philosophies. The outcome will have significant implications for the nation's economic trajectory and the financial well-being of its citizens.